this is really what property managers sell. They sell trust.
Yeah.
They don't really sell property management. All right, I'm Jason Hull, the founder and CEO of DoorGrow, the world's leading and most comprehensive coaching and consulting firm for long-term residential property management entrepreneurs. And today I am hanging out with Darryl Stickel of Trust Unlimited. Welcome, Darryl, to the DoorGrow Show.
Thanks for having me, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited about the topic of trust because I talk about this all the time. In fact, one of my most common phrases that I say to clients when talking about sales is that sales and deals happen at the speed of trust. So give us a little bit of background on you, and then we'll get into the topic at hand.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in a small town in northern British Columbia, Canada. Fairly isolated community, harsh winter conditions. People learned that they had to pull together, and it meant that you needed to look out for your neighbor, and that if you could help someone, you should. When I was 17 years old, I was playing hockey in a neighboring community, and I was attacked by a fan of the club. And he shattered my helmet, knocked me unconscious. I ended up with a severe concussion. And I had a visual impairment. I knew that I was going to become legally blind, which I am now. So my plan had been to think for a living. And now all of a sudden I had the attention span of a fruit fly, and I couldn't think. So this experience promoted a sense of empathy for me because there were such feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. Fast forward a few years and I'm studying psychology and moving towards becoming a clinical psychologist, and people would just come up to me and start telling me their problems. And so I wanted to understand why that was happening. I worked in native land claims in British Columbia, and they would ask me these sort of deep philosophical questions like, what is self-government, or what will the province look like 50 years after claims are settled? The last question they asked me was, how do I convince a group of people who have shafted for over 100 years they should trust us? I thought, man, that's a good question. Well, I went to Duke, wrote my doctoral thesis on building trust in hostile environments. And when I finished, they said, when you first started, when you first came to us, we had a conversation, we agreed, too big, too complex, he never solves it. We'll give him 6 months, and then he'll come crawling back to us, and we'll let him chisel off a little piece of this, and that'll be his thesis. They said 6 months in, you were so far beyond us, we couldn't help anymore. All we could do was sit and listen. And here we are years later, we think you've solved it. And so I went and worked for McKinsey & Company, a big management consulting firm, and got to start applying the concepts that I'd learned.
Yeah.
And then on the way to a client site, I was involved in a car accident, ended up with post-concussion syndrome again, and couldn't work those kinds of hours anymore. So I just started a small company called Trust Unlimited and started helping people better understand what trust was, what it is, how it works, and most importantly, how to build it.
Man, that's quite the journey.
So for the last 20 years, I've been helping nonprofits, private sector, public sector. Canadian military got me to help them figure out how to try to build trust with the locals in Afghanistan. Yeah. So I've been trying to help solve problems.
Well, let's make this one of those opportunities for you to help some people that are listening figure out this challenge of trust. Because trust, I really feel like, is fundamental and foundational to any relationship, and
it is
sales, and to growing a business, and all of that.
It's so critical for your audience because they need the trust of the property owners.
Yeah.
But they also need the trust of the tenants. They act as an intermediary. And so they need to be experts at building relationships with others.
So give us an idea of how do we create trust from scratch? How do we make this work? What did you figure out?
Yeah, so we start with the definition. Trust is the willingness to be vulnerable when you can't completely predict how someone else is going to behave. Okay. And that definition has two elements in it. It's got perceived uncertainty and perceived vulnerability. And those actually multiply together to give us a level of perceived risk.
Yeah.
So we've got uncertainty times vulnerability gives us a level of perceived risk. We each have a threshold of risk that we can tolerate. If we go beyond that threshold, we don't trust. If we're beneath it, then we do. If we want to understand trust, we need to understand, where does uncertainty come from? Where do perceptions of vulnerability come from? And how do we take steps to manage those? Because early in a relationship, uncertainty is really high. Means we can only tolerate a small range of vulnerability and still fit beneath that threshold. As that relationship gets deeper, the uncertainty declines, the range of vulnerability we can tolerate starts to grow. And so really, for your audience, it's going to be about, how do I take steps to understand somebody else's uncertainty? How do I help reduce it?
So what are some typical examples of uncertainty that people might have?
Yeah, so uncertainty comes from two places. It comes from us as individuals, and it comes from the context we're embedded in. And so for owners, their uncertainty is, what are the tenants doing? How are they treating the property? Is it going to be well maintained?
Yeah.
Are they going to pay on time? And so property managers can help manage that by helping them set up contracts, helping by reviewing the property on an occasional basis, monitoring behavior patterns for tenants, understanding tenant behavior in a way that most property managers don't have the opportunity to, or property owners don't have because you see a much broader swath of humanity than the typical property owner does. You're more engaged, you're on the ground. And so there's 3 levers within us as individuals, and those are benevolence, integrity, and ability. And Jason, we all have the ability to build trust with others, just some are better than others at it. Those who aren't very good have a lever that they pull, and they pull that lever over and over again and just hope it lines up. Those who are better have multiple levers. Those who are really good have multiple levers and they know when to pull which one. And so benevolence is just the belief you've got my best interest at heart and that you'll act in my best interest.
Right.
So as a property manager, you're thinking about, what does the property owner's best interest look like? What does success look like for them? How do I help them get there? Integrity is, do I follow through on my promises? And do my actions line up with the values that I express? And so what are both the explicit promises I'm making to people and the implied promises, the things that they're expecting from me? Okay. And then ability is, do I actually have the competence to do the job? And a lot of times when we pull the ability lever, we make assumptions about what excellence looks like, but we don't include the other person in that conversation. Okay. So as a property manager, you may think having the right forms in place and having a scheduled set of routines and you've got an idea of what excellence looks like. But if you actually included your stakeholders in that conversation, you might come up with a different list of things. And that's both the property owner and the tenant. So including them in that conversation can be really eye-opening.
Yeah.
And
just
then,
making sure you're both on the same page.
Exactly. And we interpret the world through stories. One of the challenges that your audience faces is that they may have a story about what's going on with the property. The owner might have a different story, and the tenant might have a third story.
Yeah.
And that's where we run into conflict. So do I say to you, I'm going to check the property every 3 months or every 6 months or once a year. Here's how I'm going to do that. Here's how I'm going to monitor. And then do I follow up with the owner and say, as per our agreement or as per my commitment, this is me following up on the promise that I made.
Okay. So Darryl, I love this. This aligns a lot with a book that I'm writing right now called The Golden Bridge Formula. And this Golden Bridge Formula is something that I've used in creating trust quickly in order to facilitate sales. And it's a formula that I've taught my clients. The basic formula is me sharing my personal why, what drives and motivates me, connecting it to the business and the business's why, and then connecting the business why to the prospect's why, or your target's why, like what they want, which means you have to figure out their why first, right? Once you figure out what they want, you can share and where they want to go. You can share your motives. And so the more extended version of the formula is personal why, what that means, plus the business why, what that means, which is where we get into the values of the company, stuff like this.
Right.
And then connect it to the prospect's why and what that would mean for them. And this is one of my greatest shortcuts for getting somebody that's terrible at sales to do sales in an authentic way and dramatically increase their close rate.
Nice.
Because any objection really always boils down to, I don't trust you. That's really the only true objection in sales. I don't trust your product or your service enough to believe that it's worth the price.
Right.
Or that it's actually going to work or it's going to benefit me. The one thing people trust is for others to be selfish. New stuff that I can turn around and then benefit and share with other entrepreneurs, with my clients.
Yeah, that's a powerful approach, finding shared superordinate goals, right? Finding the overlap between wins for both of us.
Yeah.
And partly that requires, you're right, the conversation with the other to find out what their goals and objectives are, how we help them be successful. It also requires an awareness on our part of what our goals and objectives are. I like it when people are able to be successful and have powerful, productive relationships, because I believe that that's one of the few things we actually control. It's how we show up in the world, how we engage with others.
I love it. Yeah. Great stuff. Let's pause there and I'll share a little word from our sponsor and then we'll get back into the topic of trust. So our sponsor is CoverPest. CoverPest is the easy and seamless way to add on-demand pest control to your resident benefit package. Residents love the simplicity of submitting a service request and how affordable it is compared to traditional pest control options. Investors love knowing that their property is kept pest-free, and property managers love getting their time back and making more revenue per door. Simply put, CoverPest is the easiest way to handle pest control issues at all your properties. To learn more and to get special DoorGrow pricing, visit coverpest.com/DoorGrow. That's coverpest.com/DoorGrow. All right, Darryl, back to trust. So
Yeah.
I love this idea. You talked about benevolence, integrity, and your ability and figuring out how to relate those in a way that is believable to others.
Right.
I shared a little bit about my Golden Bridge formula. I'm curious what you think of that because you're the expert on trust.
Yeah.
Maybe I can, maybe I'll have to quote you in my book or something.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah. So I think part of the DoorGrow principle, or part of the Golden Bridge principle, is finding a way to be benevolent and have it be transparent.
Absolutely. It sounds like almost a variation of a common sales question that some call the crystal ball question, which is like, hey, 12 months from now, if we were to work together, how would you know that this was a success? What would success look like?
Right.
What would, if this was a win for you, what would have had to been true for you to feel like this was really a great decision?
Right. And then here's how I'm going to help you get there. And it opens up the opportunity for us to be transparent moving forward, because we can say, you remember when you told me this is what mattered to you? This is what success looked like. This is me doing that. So there isn't room for misinterpretation or a crossing of the wires. Now, context is the other element of uncertainty, right? It's the rules of the game. And you just talked about pest cover. That's a way to change the context so that there's a structured system in place where people can respond more consistently. It reduces uncertainty. Similar with the programs that you develop for your clients. I was listening to one of your podcasts around leadership. You have offerings that help them change the context so it becomes more automated, more consistent, which creates a greater consistency for property owners and for clients or tenants that you're interacting with. And so you're taking steps to reduce uncertainty. So how do we have a conversation with property managers about doing that same thing, about putting rules and regulations in place that govern their behavior, that push them towards a more consistent place?
It's a lot of factors go into this, right? Like their company core values certainly is how they might go about doing this. Their policies and procedures goes into more specific tactical implementation of those values. And then you're getting into like, what's the motive behind it, which is where we maybe define like some sort of external focused client centric mission statement.
And the incentive structures
relates to
and
that
the job
benevolence.
descriptions. Right?
Yeah. So even with individual team members having really solid job descriptions where there's clear outcomes defined. Yeah.
Then we go to the vulnerability side of the equation. Sometimes a sale doesn't happen because people feel too vulnerable. They want to find a solution that's cheaper or easier. Think about ice cream stores that let you try a sampling of different flavors before you buy, or retail outlets that have return policies that are very generous. These are all ways for them to reduce your perceived vulnerability. So if I'm trying to grow doors, partly I want to get referrals, but partly I also want to have an opportunity for people to try me out a little bit so that they can reduce that uncertainty, so that we've got varying levels of vulnerability that they can experience with us, so that our relationship with them can grow over time. And so does that mean that I'm having conversations with them, sharing information with them, giving things to them for free so that they start to get a better sense of who I am and what my why is, and they can see the consistency between my values that I've expressed and the actions I'm taking? Once we've made the trust decision, we have what I call perceived outcomes. So we can have exactly the same experience, but have dramatically different interpretation of what's just happened. And in the outcome section, we have two levers. Was the outcome a success or a failure? And who gets the credit, who gets the blame? And because we interpret the world through stories, if we're not active in the creation of the narrative, we run the risk of people coming up with a completely different story from ours. And that perceived outcome then feeds back into our next interaction with that same person. In the middle of all this, Jason, is our emotional states. So 99% of the trust research treats people like rational actors. You've met people, right?
Yeah, they're not rational actors.
We're not always rational. And the
We're
more
emotional actors.
Yeah, the more emotional we become, the less rational we are, right? And so we need to find a way to reset those emotional states before we pull these other levers, because otherwise we're just wasting our time.
Right, yeah. If we start trying to attack their story or to start trying to attack when they're already preloaded or angry with logic, it's not generally going to be super effective.
Doesn't tend to work. And so the research that I do and the doctoral thesis that I wrote is different from most of the trust research in a few different ways. One is I include context, which the other work tends not to, which helps explain why we trust some people without knowing anything about them, right? Go to a doctor's office, doctor says, take off your clothes, and you do, right?
Yeah, they're kind of an earned authority in some people's minds.
Yeah.
They've got the lab coat and they are the person we were shown to after we got through the lobby. And so we're like, I guess I will do what they tell me to do unless it gets weird.
Yeah. So now take that and shift it from a doctor's office to a gas station restroom. Same two people, guys wearing the white lab coat. Same conversation, take off your clothes. It goes from credible to creepy in a heartbeat, right?
Right. The context is definitely going to have an impact.
And then I include vulnerability, which most of the trust research doesn't, which means that trust is a continuous variable, not a dichotomous one, right? Dichotomous variable means that it's like an old-time light switch. It's either present or absent. Reality is we trust some people more than others, and the trust can grow and evolve over time. Yeah. And so what I do is I try to help people learn how to build deeper relationships so that they're more resilient, so that when something goes wrong, you don't lose clients.
Right.
And when things go wrong, because they inevitably go wrong, right? Our response is given the most positive story you can. Tenants who leave for one reason or another aren't bad-mouthing our company or are less likely to. That's what trust buys us.
Yeah, absolutely. They give us the benefit of the doubt if we, and I think, a lot of this is established even before the sale, during the sales process. That's how we get to the sale. And then afterwards, how we onboard them can have a massive impact so that they don't have buyer's remorse. And, it's the beginning of the relationship because it's so fresh and new. It's where we're kind of establishing and showcasing benevolence, integrity, and ability. Right?
That's right. And we're setting that story for the future interactions that we have so that they look for confirming evidence.
Got it. Cool.
A lot of times when I talk about building trust, I talk about small dose of vulnerability. Share, don't scare. Acknowledge that you're not perfect or that you don't know something or that you're curious about the other party, and heavy dose of really trying to find out what's in the best interest of the other party. I think if we do it right, if we engage with a small dose of vulnerability to start, it triggers a natural response in the other party to want to respond the same way.
Darryl, I really appreciate this. This is really interesting. I'd like to stay connected. I think your message, and I would be very interested in reading your book. What's the name of your book if people are looking?
It's called Building Trust, Exceptional Leadership in the Times of Uncertainty.
That's good for today.
Yeah.
We're living what a lot are calling the post-trust era.
Trust levels are the lowest we've ever measured. And if you think about the model that I proposed, our vulnerability hasn't really gone down, but our uncertainty is bouncing all over the place. So it makes asking people to trust us just a little more hard, a little more difficult than it has been in the past.
Yeah. I think one good final question is, how do you perceive trust being impacted by AI? Because a lot of people are trying to leverage AI, use AI. They're pretending that it's them that did something and they're using AI. What do you see for the future of trust related to this AI revolution that we're going through right now?
I think it's going to be an extreme challenge. I think social media has caused problems to start with. Our relationships tend to be a mile wide and an inch deep now. They're not as resilient as they used to be. Jason, when I grew up, I could be an idiot multiple times in a row, and people were stuck with me. And so I learned. Now people have this feeling that if I make one mistake, I'm done.
Yeah. Disposable friendships and relationships.
And I'll just find somebody, some other group to hang out with on the internet. We need
And
to
then
be
we
more
end up in these echo chambers for sure.
right.
Yeah.
And isolated and lonely and talking to AI like it's a real human being. And so I think we need to be more intentional than we've ever been about building trust. And that's why I do the work I do. I try to teach people how to build stronger relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it'll become more valuable. I think that our failings and flaws as human will become more valuable because we're imperfect, and I think that humanity is going to be, or just our humanness, and is going to be a premium. It's going to be a premium experience to be able to be with a human, and so I think that relationships will matter even more, and trust certainly. And there's a lot of people that are trying to eliminate the need for trust. It's like forced. Blockchain stuff and tech and things are defined, and there's no way they could steal, cheat, or lie, and like we force it so we can eliminate the need for trust. And maybe there's a little progress that can be made that way, but I think for sure trust will be a premium.
Yeah, it may eliminate our need for trust, but it doesn't eliminate the need for us to be able to build trust with others. We still need to engage with other human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said. Well, Darryl, how can people get in touch with you or find out more about what you do?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about what your offerings are and how they can get in touch.
So I offer executive coaching, consulting, training and development, workshops, those kinds of things. The book was written because I don't want what I know to go away if I do. And they can find me on my website at trustunlimited.com. There's a blog section there with plenty of articles and topics like rebuilding trust with the police, or trust in parenting, or trust in leadership. I have a podcast called The Imperfect Cafe. And they can reach out to me directly by email at Darryl@trustunlimited.com.
Perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jason.
Absolutely. All right. So for those of you that enjoyed the show and you maybe have felt stuck or stagnant and you want to take your property management business to the next level, you can reach out to us at DoorGrow.com. Also, join our free Facebook community just for property management business owners at DoorGrowClub.com. And if you want tips, tricks, ideas, and to learn about our offers, subscribe to our newsletter by going to DoorGrow.com/subscribe. And if you found this even a little bit helpful, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. And until next time, remember the slowest path to growth is to do it alone. So let's grow together. Bye, everyone.